Millions of players call games like Blocktails, Combat Initiation and Fighting underrated. They show up in viral videos, get tons of praise, yet their player count still remain low. So maybe they are not just underrated. Maybe there's a deeper reason why people don't play these games. So in this video I decided to try to answer this question. Why are underrated Roblox games even underrated at all? Now most people would say that it is because of their complexity. Most of the Roblox players are kids who can't understand complex game mechanics, which is somewhat true, but it is not the full reason. If games remained unpopular simply due to how complex they are, then games like 99 Nights in a Forest wouldn't have been on the homepage. So I think it is safe to say that there are other reasons why these games remain less popular when games like 99 Nights in the Forest blow up. And the reason is not super complicated. It is just the grind in these games, or rather the absence of grind. Now grinding in games is kind of like work, as it involves repetitive tasks. And yes, in many games, grinding can feel very boring and players often hate the game just because it is grindy. However, in the long run, the absence of grinding is what makes Blocktails, Combat Initiation and Fighting less popular. A lot of games are intentionally designed to be grindy because this is one of the psychologies which makes players play the game for a long time. Players get a sense of accomplishment when they get rewards from grinding. In these underrated games, there is not a lot of grinding involved. Players can play the game for a few hours, experience everything, and then quit. Now don't get me wrong. The first few hours of playing Combat Initiation or Blocktails or Fighting will probably be more fun than the same few hours which you would spend in other Roblox games. But once you are done with the entire game, there is usually nothing left to do. For example, an average Blocktails player can easily complete the entire game including the pit and all other endgame content in less than 30 hours. This means that players will simply stop playing the game as there will be nothing new to experience. But this doesn't happen in grindy games. These games will always require over 100 hours of playtime to get everything. So these games remain popular for a long time. Developers can keep the players grinding the game while they are working on an update. However, for games like Blocktails or Combat Initiation, they update once or twice in a year and only add around 2 to 3 hours of content. So players will only play for those 2 or 3 hours and then move on. Grinding is usually designed to keep players playing the game even if it feels repetitive and boring. But here I want to make one thing sure. In some games the method of grinding is genuinely fun and exciting. It is not doing the same thing again and again with macros like you do in simulators. For example, in shooter games you may use the same gun in different ways and tricks. So here the grind still remains fun for a long time. However, in these so-called underrated games, you experience everything in a few hours and are left with nothing to do. And also rewards earned through significant effort produce a strong emotional reaction and a greater sense of pride and ownership among players. So for most players, if you get something by grinding, then you are likely to appreciate it more than something which can be got without much effort. This means you are gonna use those rewards for a longer time before quitting the game. The lack of a dedicated progression system in Blocktails and Combat Initiation doesn't motivate the player to keep on playing the game once they are over with the main story or quest. These games do have a progression system, but it is almost insignificant when compared to what the game has to offer. And the biggest problem is when you start a game with no grinding involved, then it is much harder to implement grinding in the game without making players mad. So this means the game can never be monetized easily and the development will be much slower than other games. For Fighting, the problem is even worse, as this game has a lot of potential if it had grinding and progression system. In terms of quality, it is almost comparable to games like Bed Wars. However, players can easily get access to all the kits as soon as they join the game. They will probably use all of them one by one for maybe 1 or 2 matches and then quit the game, because they will feel like they have experienced everything. monetization and progression system is very important for a game like this because it involves high quality graphics and animations. It can be very expensive to run the game and make little profit. And profit is usually the primary motive of all game developers. If they can't make enough money, then they might have to abandon the game. So yeah, in conclusion, these games don't remain less popular because players don't know about these games, rather because they lack a progression system which most games offer. So that's these games' biggest strength and weakness at the same time. These games have very fun and interesting mechanics. However, playing these games for a long time can feel repetitive for the players. That's why these games get very high CCUs during updates and then quickly fall off. And I think that's pretty okay and innovative in a way. Not every Roblox game needs to follow the same formula, because at the end of the day, players' fun is what matters the most.